Let me show you something most men will never admit to themselves. You're texting her back immediately. You're making yourself available every weekend. You're giving her your full attention, your emotional support, your validation. You're doing everything you were told makes women feel valued. And she's pulling away. Not slowly, not gently. She's going cold. Her responses are shorter. Her enthusiasm is dying. And the more you give, the less she seems to care. Here's the question that's eating you alive. Why is effort yielding rejection? You're following the script, the one society gave you, the one that promised if you're attentive, available, and emotionally generous, she'll recognize your value. She'll appreciate you. She'll choose you. But she's not choosing you. She's fading. And every text you send, every plan you make, every moment you invest feels like it's pushing her further away. Have you ever felt that hollow ache when she takes hours to respond but you answered her in minutes? Have you ever refreshed your phone, waiting for her reply, knowing she's seen your message but hasn't bothered to answer? Have you ever wondered why the same attention that once made her smile now makes her eyes glaze over? What if I told you that your emotional generosity isn't the problem? It's the signal you're sending with it. What if the very act of unlimited availability is communicating something dark to her subconscious? Something you never intended? What if every instant response, every cleared weekend, every emotional dump you graciously receive is coding you as something her brain fundamentally cannot value? Here's what's really happening. You're not being rejected for who you are. You're being rejected for what you're signaling you are. And that signal has nothing to do with your character, your intentions, or your worth as a human being. It has everything to do with supply. This is the law of emotional famine. And once you understand it, you'll never look at attraction the same way again. You'll never wonder why she obsesses over the guy who barely texts her back. You'll never be confused when she ghosts the man who gave her everything. Because you'll understand the cold, brutal economics beneath human desire. Why does abundance kill attraction? Why does scarcity create obsession? Why does the brain assign zero value to unlimited supply, no matter how genuine the source? Why does she chase the man who's barely available while ignoring the one who's always there? What is it about emotional famine that triggers something primal in the human psyche? What ancient survival mechanism makes us devalue what's freely given and worship what's strategically withheld? Why does intermittent reinforcement create stronger psychological bonds than consistent reward? And here's the question that'll haunt you. How many women have you lost not because you weren't enough, but because you were too available? By the end of this, you're going to understand why your attention is either worthless or priceless, and it has nothing to do with the quality of who you are. You're going to see the supply chain dynamics of emotional investment. And you're going to learn the single most powerful form of leverage you possess. But first, let me show you what you've been getting wrong about value itself. Here's what most men believe. Emotional generosity equals emotional connection. They believe that if they give more attention, more validation, more availability, she'll feel more valued, more seen, more appreciated, and therefore more attracted. This is the provider mindset, and it's killing your dating life. Because emotional generosity doesn't create attraction, it signals abundance. And abundance doesn't trigger desire, it triggers indifference. Let me reframe this for you. Your attention isn't a gift, it's a commodity. And like every commodity, its value is determined not by its quality, but by its supply relative to demand. This is basic economics applied to psychology. And the moment you understand this, everything changes. Think about diamonds. Why are diamonds valuable? Not because they're rare, they're actually quite common. They're valuable because De Beers controls the supply. They create artificial scarcity. They make you believe diamonds are precious by limiting availability. Now think about water. Why is water nearly free? Because it's abundant, unlimited supply, no scarcity. Even though water is objectively more valuable than diamonds, you die without it. The market assigns it almost zero price. Your attention works the same way. When you text her back immediately, you're signaling unlimited supply. When you clear your weekend to see her, you're signaling no competing demand. When you're always available for her emotional needs, you're signaling that your time and energy have no alternative cost. And her brain, operating on ancient economic principles, assigns your attention the same value the market assigns water, practically nothing. But before we go deeper into the psychological mechanism, I need to show you the 5 behavioral signals that are actively destroying your value. These aren't subtle. She's seeing these every single day. And each one is reinforcing the same message: low supply, unlimited availability, zero scarcity. Killer 1. Zero latency signal. You respond to her message before you've even finished the conversation you were already having. She texts. 3 seconds later, you're replying. What her brain hears: I was literally waiting for your message. You're my priority. I have nothing else happening. Killer 2. Availability vacuum. She texts Friday afternoon. Want to hang out this weekend? And you immediately clear your Saturday. You rearrange plans. You make yourself available whenever works for her. What her brain hears: my entire life revolves around you. I have no competing demands. I'm not in demand by anyone else. Killer 3. Free therapy signal. She's upset. She calls you at 11 p.m. You drop everything: your sleep, your boundaries, your own peace of mind, to be her emotional support system. You listen for hours. You validate endlessly. What her brain hears: your emotional needs are more important than my boundaries. I'm your dumping ground, not your partner. Killer 5. The pursuer's burden. You're always the one initiating. You text first. You suggest plans. You bring up the serious conversations. You're doing the work of two people to maintain the connection. What her brain hears: he has to chase me. I don't have to invest. This is one-sided, and it always will be. Killer 5. The defense reflex. Whenever there's friction, you immediately apologize. You over-explain yourself. You defend your actions. You work to smooth things over. What her brain hears: he doesn't believe he's valuable enough to stand firm. He's negotiating his worth constantly. He's the pursuer, I'm the prize. These 5 signals: zero latency, availability vacuum, free therapy, pursuer's burden, defense reflex, are the broadcasting tower of low value. And the deadly part? You're probably doing all 5. If this tactical breakdown of value is already shifting your perspective, hit the subscribe button now, because what we cover next is the shadow truth that makes all 5 of these signals instantly fatal. But the real question isn't why she doesn't value water. The real question is what her brain is doing when you pour it out. Now, here's the part they never tell you. The law of emotional famine isn't just about scarcity creating value. It's about what scarcity triggers in the human brain. And when you understand this mechanism, you'll see why she obsesses over men who withhold and forgets men who give. She's not consciously doing this. She doesn't wake up and think, he's too available, therefore I'll lose interest. This is happening at a subconscious level. Her brain is running value calculations based on perceived scarcity and effort required. This is the psychology of intermittent reinforcement. It's why slot machines are addictive. It's why she checks her phone obsessively for the guy who barely responds. It's why unpredictable rewards create stronger psychological bonds than consistent ones. Have you ever noticed how she lights up when the guy who ignores her finally texts back? Have you ever seen her obsess over someone who's emotionally distant while taking you, the reliable one, completely for granted? Have you ever wondered why inconsistent attention creates more emotional investment than steady care? Because her brain isn't wired to value consistency in the context of mate selection. It's wired to value scarcity, status, high-effort rewards, the prize that requires pursuit. You've been operating on the assumption that being a good man, attentive, available, caring, will make her choose you. But attraction doesn't operate on moral principles. It operates on perceived value. And perceived value is always, always determined by scarcity. Here's the uncomfortable question. What if the very traits that make you a good partner are the same traits that make you invisible in the dating market? What if reliability signals low status? What if availability signals lack of options? What if emotional generosity signals that you're not the prize, she is? And here's the question that cuts deeper. If you knew that pulling back your attention would make her obsess, would you do it? Or does part of you resist because withholding feels manipulative? Because you were taught that good men give freely? Let me plant something in your mind, something we'll return to later. The most powerful form of care might not be giving her everything. It might be teaching her that your presence is earned, that your attention is finite, that you are not the water, you are the diamond. But before we get there, you need to understand the shadow truth, the dark mechanism beneath all of this. The reason scarcity doesn't just create interest, it creates obsession. This is the psychology of loss aversion and variable rewards, and it's darker than you think. Let me take you inside her mind. When she's texting the guy who's barely available, she sends a message. Hours pass, no response. Her brain enters a state of uncertainty. Dopamine spikes, not from pleasure, but from anticipation. The unpredictability of when or if he'll respond activates the same reward circuits triggered by gambling. When he finally texts back, brief, non-committal, but just enough, her brain floods with relief and reward. That variable reinforcement schedule creates a powerful psychological loop. She's not addicted to him, she's addicted to the unpredictable reward cycle his scarcity creates. Now contrast that with you. You text back immediately, every time, predictably, consistently. Her brain receives the reward, your attention, without effort, without uncertainty, without the dopamine spike of anticipation. There's no psychological tension, no chase, no variable schedule. And so her brain does what every brain does, with unlimited predictable supply. It stops valuing it. This isn't a moral failing on her part, this is neural programming. The human brain evolved to pursue scarce, high-effort rewards and to ignore abundant, low-effort ones. Because in ancestral environments, scarcity signaled value. The fruit that required climbing the dangerous tree was worth more than the fruit rotting on the ground. You are the fruit on the ground. And the brutal truth is this: it doesn't matter how sweet you are, how ripe, how perfectly formed. If you're freely available, her brain categorizes you as low status, not consciously, subconsciously, automatically, beneath her awareness. Here's where it gets even darker. Machiavelli understood this principle 5 centuries ago. In The Prince, he wrote about the relationship between generosity and power. He observed that rulers who gave too freely were despised, while those who were strategically stingy commanded respect and loyalty. Why? Because generosity signals weakness. It signals that you need to buy affection. It signals that you don't believe your presence alone is valuable enough. Strategic scarcity signals the opposite. It signals that your time is precious, that you have options, that you are the prize, not the pursuer. This is the principle of virtue, the strategic deployment of resources to maximize perceived value and power. And whether you like it or not, dating is a marketplace of perceived value. She's not choosing based on who you are internally. She's choosing based on what signals you're sending about your status, your options, your scarcity. Let me give you a visual metaphor. Picture this scene, a theater. The audience sits in darkness, watching a projection on the screen. They believe the images are real, three-dimensional, solid, tangible. But walk behind the screen and you'd see it's all light, illusion. The projector creates the reality the audience experiences. Your attention is the projector. The frequency, intensity, and scarcity of your attention create the projection of your value in her mind. You think she's seeing the real you, your character, your intentions, your worth. But she's only seeing the projection, the supply dynamics of your emotional energy. When you flood her with attention, the projection reads, low status, no options, desperate. When you strategically limit your attention, the projection reads, high status, in demand, scarce resource. The projection isn't you, but it's what she responds to. Because she can't see behind the screen. None of us can. We're all responding to projections, to signals, not substance. Now here's where this cuts into shadow territory. Part of you resists this truth. Part of you wants to believe that authenticity should be enough, that being genuine, caring, and available should win, that love should transcend these cold, strategic calculations. But that resistance? That's your own project. You're projecting your ideal world onto the real one. You're projecting your wish for how attraction should work onto how it actually works. And every time you choose unlimited availability over strategic scarcity, you're choosing the comfort of your illusion over the discomfort of reality. Have you ever felt the sting of being taken for granted by someone you adored? Have you ever given everything and watched her give nothing back? Have you ever wondered why she treats you like an option while you treat her like a priority? Because you taught her to. Not with your words, with your supply chain. Every instant reply taught her your time is abundant. Every cleared weekend taught her you have no competing priorities. Every emotional dump you absorbed taught her that her needs matter more than your boundaries. You weren't being kind. You were signaling low value. And her brain did exactly what evolution designed it to do. It deprioritized the low-value resource and pursued the high-value one. This is the shadow truth you don't want to face. Your niceness has been your sabotage. Your generosity has been your prison. Your availability has been the signal that you're not worth pursuing. But here's the question that might save you. What if you could reverse the projection? What if you could take the same attention, the same care, the same emotional depth, but deploy it strategically? What if you could create scarcity not by becoming cold, but by becoming selective? What if you could maintain your authenticity while controlling your supply? And here's the deeper question. What if the reason you've been afraid to pull back isn't fear that she'll lose interest, but fear that you'll discover how little interest was there to begin with? What if scarcity doesn't create value where none exists? It reveals value where it does. What if the women who disappear when you pull back were never invested, and the ones who lean in when you create space were waiting for you to demonstrate self-respect? What if emotional famine isn't about manipulating her? It's about respecting yourself enough to stop giving your presence to people who don't earn it. There's one more layer, the one that resolves the paradox, the one that shows you exactly how this works in the three scenarios you're living right now. But before we go there, sit with this. The supply chain of your attention is the most powerful leverage you possess, and you've been giving it away for free. Now, let me resolve the paradox. Remember what I said at the beginning, that effort is yielding rejection, that the more you give, the less she cares, that abundance is killing attraction. Here's the truth. The paradox isn't that effort doesn't work. It's that you've been applying effort to the wrong variable. You've been trying to increase supply when you should have been managing demand. Let me show you exactly how this plays out in the three scenarios that are defining your dating life right now. Scenario A, the texting loop. You meet someone. The conversation is good. She's responding. You're excited, so you text her back immediately. Every time. You don't want her to think you're not interested. You don't want her to wait. You're being respectful, attentive, engaged. But here's what's happening in her brain. Your instant response signals that you are waiting for her message, that you have nothing more important happening, that you're available, not just in this moment, but always. And her subconscious runs the calculation. If he's always available for me, he's probably not in demand. If he's not in demand, he's low status. If he's low status, he's not the prize. Now imagine the alternative. Same conversation, same interest, but this time you respond when it's natural for you. Maybe that's an hour later, maybe it's 3 hours. Not because you're playing games, but because you have a life, because you're at the gym or deep in work or spending time with friends who matter. When you do respond, it's high quality, thoughtful, engaged, but it's on your time, not hers. What does her brain do? It enters the uncertainty zone. She doesn't know when you'll respond, so she checks her phone. She wonders. She invests mental energy into anticipating your reply. And when it comes, the dopamine hit is amplified by the wait. You haven't changed who you are. You've changed the supply dynamics. And her perception of your value shifts accordingly. The paradox. Being less immediately available makes you more emotionally present in her mind. Scarcity creates obsession. Abundance creates apathy. Scenario B, the weekend plan. She suggests hanging out this weekend. You're excited, you want to see her, so you say yes immediately. You clear your Saturday. You're available whenever works for her. Here's what you just communicated. Your time is abundant. You have no competing priorities. Your social calendar is empty enough that you can reorganize around her schedule. Translation to her subconscious. Low status, not in demand. She's your only option. Now imagine this instead. She suggests the weekend. You check your calendar. You're genuinely busy. Friday you have plans with friends. Sunday you're committed to something that matters to you. But Saturday evening you have a window, a specific window, 7 to 11 p.m. You offer that window, not apologetically, not like you're doing her a favor, just matter of fact. I'm free Saturday evening, 7 to 11. Want to grab dinner at that Italian place downtown? What did you just communicate? That your time is finite, that you have a life she's being invited into, not a void she's filling. that she's important enough to get your Saturday evening, but not so important that you'll reorganize your entire existence around her. Translation: high status, in demand, selective about who gets access. The paradox: creating boundaries around your time doesn't push her away, it pulls her in. Because scarcity triggers pursuit, and pursuit creates investment. Scenario C: the emotional dump. She texts you at 11 p.m. She's upset, drama with her friends, stress at work, existential anxiety, and you, being the good guy you are, drop everything. You listen, you validate. You spend 2 hours absorbing her emotional chaos, offering support, being her rock, and she feels better for the moment. But here's what just happened. You taught her that your emotional energy is unlimited, that she can access you as a free emotional dumping ground anytime, with no reciprocity, no boundaries, no cost. You've become her therapist, not her lover, not the prize, the safe, reliable source of free emotional labor. Now imagine the alternative. She texts at 11 p.m. You're genuinely winding down. You respond, but you redirect. Sounds rough. Let's talk about it tomorrow when I can give you my full attention. Breakfast at 9. You're not cold, you're not dismissive, but you're also not infinitely available. You're setting a boundary. You're communicating that your energy is finite and valuable, that deep conversations happen when you're both present, not when she's spiraling and you're her emotional band-aid. What happens? She respects you more, not less, because you respected yourself. And that self-respect signals value. It signals that your presence is earned, not assumed. The paradox: refusing to be her unlimited emotional resource doesn't make you uncaring. It makes you rare, and rarity creates desire. Here's what connects all three scenarios. You're not changing your personality. You're not becoming cold, aloof, or manipulative. You're simply managing the supply of your attention, your time, your emotional energy. You're treating yourself like the scarce resource you actually are. Because here's the final truth. You are scarce. There is only one you. Your time is finite. Your attention is limited. Your emotional energy is precious. You've just been acting like it's infinite, like you're water endlessly flowing, available to anyone who's thirsty. But you're not water. You're the diamond. And the moment you start behaving like it, not arrogantly, not coldly, but simply with self-respect and boundaries, her brain will recognize what it's been missing. The law of emotional famine doesn't mean starve her of genuine connection. It means stop flooding her with signals of low value. It means create space where desire can grow. It means respect your own scarcity. And here's the part that changes everything. When you pull back your unlimited supply, one of two things happens. Either she leans in, recognizing the value she was taking for granted, or she disappears, revealing she was never invested to begin with. Both outcomes are wins, because you either gain her genuine interest or you free yourself from someone who is using you as an emotional placeholder. The women worth your time? They'll respect the boundary. They'll rise to meet your standard. They'll recognize that your scarcity means your presence is a privilege, not a right. The ones who disappear? They were never going to choose you anyway. They were just comfortable with your unlimited availability. And you deserve more than being someone's comfort zone. So where does this leave you? You're standing at the edge of a choice. Not a tactic, not a game. A fundamental shift in how you value yourself. You can keep operating on the old script, the one that tells you more effort equals more connection. The one that promises if you're just available enough, caring enough, generous enough, she'll finally see your worth. But you know where that leads now. You've lived it. The instant replies met with indifference, the cleared weekends met with flakiness, the emotional labor met with zero reciprocity. Or you can step into the law of emotional famine, not as manipulation, not as strategy, but as self-respect. Here's what integration looks like. First, audit your supply chain. Look at your current dating life, your conversations, your relationships. Where are you signaling unlimited supply? Where are you texting back instantly out of fear, not genuine availability? Where are you clearing your calendar out of desperation, not desire? Where are you absorbing emotional chaos out of people-pleasing, not care? Be honest, brutally honest, because every place you're oversupplying is a place you're signaling low value. Second, reclaim your scarcity. You are not abundant. You are finite. You have 24 hours in a day. You have limited emotional energy. You have a life that exists independent of her validation. Start living like it. Respond when it's natural for you, not when fear demands it. Make plans when you genuinely have availability, not when you're rearranging everything to accommodate her. Engage in deep conversations when you're both present, not when she needs a free therapy session at midnight. This isn't about playing hard to get, it's about being hard to get, because you actually have a life worth protecting. Third, embrace the filter. When you create scarcity, some women will disappear. Let them. They were never choosing you, they were choosing your unlimited supply. You were the emotional ATM, the convenience, the placeholder. The women who lean in when you create boundaries, those are the ones worth your time, because they're responding to your value, not your availability. They're pursuing you, not your service. Scarcity doesn't create value where none exists. It reveals who was actually invested. Fourth, reframe care as selectivity. You're not withdrawing care, you're directing it strategically. You're not becoming cold, you're becoming intentional. The most powerful form of care isn't giving everything to everyone. It's giving your best to those who've earned it, and making damn sure you've earned access to yourself. Have you ever wondered what would happen if you treated your own time with the same respect you demand from others? Have you ever imagined what your dating life would look like if you stopped chasing and started attracting? Have you ever considered that the very act of creating space might be the invitation she's been waiting for? What if the women you want are waiting for you to demonstrate that you value yourself? What if they're exhausted by men who pedestalize them and desperate for someone who sees them as an equal, worthy of pursuit but not worship? What if your scarcity is the permission they need to stop performing and start investing? And what if the fear that's been stopping you, the fear that pulling back means losing her, is actually the fear that's been destroying your value all along? This is the shift from provider to prize, not because you're playing a game, but because you are acting in accordance with your actual finite value. The most powerful form of care isn't giving everything to everyone. It's giving your best to those who've earned it, and making damn sure you've earned access to yourself. Here's the truth you need to hear. You will lose some women when you create scarcity, but you were never going to keep them anyway. They were consuming your supply, not building a connection. And the ones you don't lose, they'll finally see you, not as the safe option, not as the backup plan, but as the scarce, valuable, high-status man you actually are. This is the law of emotional famine. And it's not about making her obsess. It's about making sure that your presence is treated like the rare, precious, finite resource it is. So here's your challenge. Stop being water. Stop flooding her world with unlimited supply. Stop acting like your attention, your time, your emotional energy are abundant and worthless. Be the diamond. Finite, rare, valuable. Not because you're playing a game, but because you're living in reality. And watch what happens when you finally respect your own scarcity. Watch how she starts checking her phone. Watch how she starts initiating. Watch how she starts investing. Not because you manipulated her, but because you stopped manipulating yourself into believing that giving everything meant being valued. The women who disappear when you create boundaries weren't meant to stay. The women who lean in when you respect yourself, those are the ones who are waiting for you to wake up. Are you ready to stop being the fruit on the ground? Are you ready to be the reward that requires effort? Are you ready to treat your own presence like the privilege it is? Because she's not going to do it for you. No one is going to value you more than you value yourself. And the moment you start operating as a scarce resource, the moment you create emotional famine instead of emotional flood, everything changes. The scarcity is the leverage, but the structure that holds that leverage is your frame. To understand how to build that immovable reality so you never have to worry about testing or withdrawal again, watch this video next. Frame control, the one skill that makes her stop testing you. Not because you became someone else, but because you finally started acting like the finite, valuable, irreplaceable person you've always been. That's the law of emotional famine. That's the power you've had all along. And that's the truth that'll set you free.